It is a pleasure to be coming to you from the Zoom virtual Majestic Theater. I worked hard to get my virtual background going. This is our usual rehearsal space for the Sunderman Conservatory Wind Symphony. And I thought maybe if you could all see the view that you're used to seeing, that might make you feel right at home. We're very excited to be joined today by composer Ryan Williams. Mr. Williams is going to talk with us a little bit about the project that we're embarking on. The project, of course, is a commissioning consortium featuring his work, Mandatory Social Distancing. As he writes on his website, the effects of COVID-19 and this coronavirus have forced so many colleges, universities, and schools across the country and across the world to close. And it's often a struggle to figure out, what are we going to do in this setting of ensemble instruction and group music making? What are we going to do when the entire point of the ensemble, the idea of a group music making setting, is eliminated by virtue of the fact that we're not allowed to be in groups? It kind of takes the definition of ensemble and sort of turns it upside down. So this project was initiated by Dr. Jay Sconyers, director of bands at McNeese State University, and he got Mr. Williams involved, and I'm sure that that Ryan will have a lot more to tell you about the project. Ryan Williams is someone who is a native of our area, went to high school in Mechanicsburg with a member of the Gettysburg College music faculty. I'll let him tell you more about that. Right now, he's living in Columbia, South Carolina, attending the University of South Carolina, working on a DMA in composition. And so without further ado, how about a warm shuffle for composer Ryan Williams? Let's welcome him.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm really glad to have a chance to be here to chat with you guys and to get to know you guys a little bit, let you guys get to know me. As Dr. McCutcheon said, I'm from the area. It's exciting. There's Jay and I hope to get 8 or 9 groups to sign on to the consortium for this project, and we ended up at 26. 26 colleges, universities. That also includes a couple of high schools. From 16 different states and Trinidad all joined on. So it was really exciting to see how much this grew up and really took off once the dominoes started to fall. So it's kind of a nice silver lining, and with all the insanity we're dealing with right now, at least we've got something positive to check out of it. But of those 26 schools, I'm excited to have Gettysburg on. I know the school. It's the area where I grew up. Actually, when I did my student teaching, my undergrad was in music ed. And so I was living at home in Mechanicsburg while student teaching and doing my student teaching down at New Oxford. So I was going up and down 15 every day and driving past Gettysburg College all the time. So I know where you guys are well. As Dr. McCutcheon mentioned, I went to high school with Susan Homiller, I guess Dr. Marks, I think, as you guys know her now. We were band dorks together way back in the day. She did as much time in the band world as the vocal world, and I guess we see where that's led for her as well. Sort of as I was kind of getting around working on this piece and settling in, and remember, wait a minute, Sue works there, so it's exciting. A couple connections to the Gettysburg area. I guess just a little brief background. I don't want to talk about myself too much here. There's better things to talk about. I grew up in Mechanicsburg. I was a band kid. I still consider myself a band kid. We get older and the hairline goes a little bit further back, but at the end of the day, we're all still band kids. I started college as a physics major. Physics, lots of fun. Calculus, not any fun at all. Decided maybe a science, math-based career wasn't the best idea. But at that time, I found a big love for teaching music. I got to tech Mechanicsburg's band that summer and had a really good time doing it, and I wasn't that bad at it. So I decided, I'll go to school for music ed. Really found a passion there. I spent 7 years teaching in high school. I did 6 years in Baltimore County, Perry Hall High School, if you guys know the Baltimore County area. My last year teaching was in Delaware. About that time, I decided that K-12 wasn't really what I wanted to be doing, that I felt this pull to explore the theory composition route, to maybe teach college a little bit. So I left K-12. I got my master's degree at Westchester. Then I did a year teaching college down here in South Carolina. Now I'm working on my doctorate degree at University of South Carolina. I'm in that wonderful status that any doctorate student knows called ABD. Technically, it means all but dissertation. I think we all know it as all but done, all but doctor, any kind of sense of relief and resolution of the whole thing. I've taken my last exam I ever have to take, and man, they make you work for it. The worst music history test ever. Now all I have to do is a dissertation, which for me, fortunately, is just a piece of music. And again, silver lining, sadly, the DCI summer got canceled. So I've got a lot more free time to work on my dissertation this summer. Outside of being a theory nerd, I'm also a marching band guy. I'm blessed enough that I make a living in marching band. I write between 16 and 18 band shows each year, and that pays the bills for a year. I spend my summer, most of the summer, on the road teaching DCI, which is a fantastic experience. It's a lot of fun to do that and get to work with some really high-end performers and pushing to achieve levels that not a lot of people really get to work on. So it's really quite a unique and fortunate life. And like I said, yeah, I feel really blessed about where I am with all of that. So yeah, the last 6 or 7 years of my life have been really focused on composing, music theory, composition, being a student and going this direction. And that's kind of led us to where we are now with this project. It actually started, I had a commission consortium last year for mostly high school focused for a small piece of music. Did that, and colleague and friend in Delaware, part of the consortium, had a residency and brought me up to his school to do 3 days with his students in early March of this year. Part of it was just working on some fundamental skills. At the end of the day, I love teaching. And so, it's not just about my stuff, but just teaching and get out there and work. So worked with his ensembles on just some fundamental stuff and had a lot of fun teaching his theory class and making their brains hurt a little bit by putting things like a 5 or a 6 on the bottom of a time signature. You can do that. It hurts, but you can do that. So at the end of the second day, he called me and said that this is when the pandemic started to pick up. And at the end of that second day, his school district made the call that nobody outside the school, teachers and students, was allowed in the building any longer. So his student teacher, that was the end of her student teaching placement. For me as a guest, that was the end of it. So it's okay. I'm not going to try to fight it and whatever. It's school policy, and you roll with it, you deal with it. So I, called the airline, changed my flight to get from Delaware back to South Carolina a little bit sooner. Woke up that morning, went to the airport, and I'm just sitting in the airport, just like, what's going on, and just thinking about all the stuff and that little bit of fear in the back of my mind. And I'm starting to think about, well, how can bands still work if we can't go to school together? Can we do that? I'm thinking Eric Whitaker had those beautiful virtual choir pieces that he did. Can a band do that also? Is that possible? And as I'm sitting there mulling over everything going on, I got the call from Jay Sconyers. I work with him with the Blue Stars. That's where he and I met. He actually got his doctorate at South Carolina, but we just barely passed each other. We didn't actually know each other at the school. He's a fantastic director down at McNeese State University in southern Louisiana on the Gulf Coast. So he called me that morning and said, could we do a virtual wind band? And I said, it's funny, I've been thinking about that myself. And that's kind of where this piece came out of, sort of from the frustration and really, it's easy to get bogged down and everything sucks. Things are just falling apart. This is terrible. What are we going to do? Find that silver lining. Okay, here's where we are. We're not going to change it, unless somebody's got a minor in epidemiology. If you do change that to your major, you make a lot more money in that than you do in band. But unless you know how to fix this thing, embrace where we are and try to find what you can do that you have control over, and how can you find a positive direction to go forward. How can you be an optimist and and keep yourself looking forward to something. And that's really where this piece all came out of. From that conversation with Jay, it kind of just really took off. I spent the rest of the day on airplanes and running through airports and everything, thinking about this piece and what could it be, how could it work, starting to think about the technology side of it and how to get people to join into it, how to distribute things to everybody, how it's all going to come together. And that's sort of where everything evolved from there. So I'll pause for a second. If you guys have any questions about me, where I've been to get to this point, or any of the basics of the piece. But after this, I do want to start talking a little bit about the piece and walk you through where it came from, how it came together, and so forth. But yeah, if you have any questions, give you a chance now. Amanda.
So I was looking at your website and noticed you did a lot with electronic music or electroacoustic. How did you start to get involved with that?
One side of it was just some interest and exploring and wanting to know what's possible. I'm a dork. I'll freely own and admit that I'm a dork. And kind of computer things have always been an interest to me. And much to my parents' dismay, that I never went the computer science route. Again, computer science, better money than band, not as much fun as band. So I had the interest there anyway. Then during my master's degree, I had to take a class on computer music, which, forces your hand to learn some things that way. But I started to find this whole other world of what music was available. I had actually taught some music tech classes in Baltimore. It was a year-long course teaching students the basics of just using something like GarageBand. We used a program called Cakewalk Home Studio, similar to Audacity. Very simple, just nothing that deep. But over the couple of years that the kids could take it, they learned a lot more about it and got deeper. And I had some fun doing that. Then my master's showed me a whole lot more. And once I started to sort of see what other people could do, I started to get excited about it. And I've come to learn as a composer, there's so many different things that are possible in music that you never think are possible because it's just outside the realm of just what we're used to, whether it's playing in just an ensemble with X, Y, and Z instruments, or which instruments are allowed to be played. What is an instrument? Is a computer an instrument? We get into found percussion, which I used for this piece. And all of a sudden, a jar of peanuts becomes a percussion instrument. I wrote that piece last summer. What sounds are you allowed to make? All of a sudden the computer can do things. I've dabbled with some microtonality. We know the 12 notes on the chromatic scale, but there are a whole lot more notes in between all of that. Trombone players, you spend your life panicking, trying to learn exactly where all those 7 positions are. And all of a sudden you find out that you can do all that stuff in between those 7. So that, it's, a lot of different possibilities came to mind. And I had fun with the electronics because you don't need to have an ensemble in front of you to be able to start to do a lot of other things with it. And just by doing some creative manipulation of sound with the computer, you can really create a lot of neat effects. I think one of my favorite pieces was a piece I did for flute. And I used 4 speakers in the corners of the room, and through the computer, various delay effects throughout the piece. You can never tell what the live instrument is. The balance and the acoustic instrument just creates all these layers and layers and layers that really, for the audience sitting in the middle of the room, you're just enveloped in all of this sound. It's just kind of warmth and evocative, and it's all these neat things. At least I feel that it is. Maybe somebody else just rolls their eyes at it, but it was a lot of fun to do that project. Electronics is something else that I really want to explore with the band side of things, and how can we bring electronic sounds into a band tastefully and not gratuitously and overdone or anything, but just, you've got flutes and clarinets and trumpets and horns and this electronic layer that's just a part of that ensemble. Cool. I like that question. Good first one. Anybody else have anything?
Well, Ryan, one of the things that strikes me is you mentioned how you're integrating electronics into band and into the wind band. Both of our ensembles, we actually have members of 2 ensembles here today. We have the Sunderman Conservatory Wind Symphony, and we also have the Symphony Band. And each of those groups this spring was working on a piece that featured a mixture of acoustic and electronic sounds. Sometimes and typically triggered live during the performance. rather than sort of, as we used to think back in the 1970s, the, for marimba and tape. And none of our students remember that, but, well, I do. I don't know if you do. That even and tape might be a little old for you.
It's,
So
I've studied a number of tape pieces. Now the fancy pants term is fixed media.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. Fixed media is what we're calling it now.
Yeah. So same thing, but a little bit more relevant.
Indeed. So I am curious to know about how you might approach integrating electronics into the wind band.
So there's, I got to be a part of an ensemble performance of a piece that used those fixed media elements, simply just audio triggers off of a laptop. By saying I was involved, I was the guy at the laptop hitting spacebar.
That's an important and critical job. If no one hits the spacebar, then the piece doesn't work.
It's as important as the percussionist who has the triangle part in the back of the band and they miss the triangle on that isolated little ding.
I've seen that happen.
Holst, I think we all have.
Yeah, Holst first suite in E flat, movement 2. I saw someone whiff the triangle one time. It was a shame.
Yeah. So it's using that fixed pre-recorded is. It's a neat layer. It creates a texture. It kind of, in my mind, I see it more of, if you think about painting on a plain white canvas, using those pre-recorded layers like that sort of color your canvas. So your ensemble, the acoustic instruments are still your colors. They're still the subject and the focus of your painting. But that pre-recorded texture sort of, rather than a white canvas, it's ivory or it's light gray. It just gives it a slight colorization. What I'm interested to explore is a way that, a program that I've used a few times is called Max. It's more programming than it is music, but it takes an audio input, offers any infinite number of audio manipulation options to it, and then the speakers create some kind of an output sound. I did a piece for French horn and vibraphone a couple of years ago, except the horn used a Yamaha silent brass mute plugged into the bell. So it's designed as a practice mute so that nobody can hear the outside instrument, but the player can plug headphones into the mute and listen to themselves practice. Well, rather than headphones, we took the output from the mute, ran it into the computer, and the audience never hears a French horn. They hear all these computer synthesized, electronic, crazy, not normal sounds, but it's part of that musical texture. That's really the route that I would love to find a great way of that live performance with the electronics. And, we've been using synthesizers in a band for a while, even as simple as we don't have room for a grand piano on stage, so we'll use a digital piano with a really nice speaker. Or, we don't have an organ in our recital hall, so I can use that digital piano, hit the organ button, and, so that simple use of an electronic instrument that way. But what can we do to create a sound that isn't possible acoustically and is a little bit more relevant within the score than simply just hitting play on that tape or that fixed media piece? There haven't been, as far as I found, many pieces that do that. I think because there's a balance of how do I mic this one instrument so that it can compete with 60, 50, 40, 70 winds on stage playing a full sound without either overblowing your speakers or the winds at a piano can't keep up with that speaker. And I think sometimes we hate to look at the impact that marching band has had on the band world. But so many high schools now have the big sound systems for their marching band that can be scaled down to different levels. And I think that would offer us the ability to start to integrate the electronic live instrument with the acoustic instruments. So it's like I said, I haven't seen a whole lot of use of that so far, but it's something that I would definitely love to do it. Throwing out composer names, Mason Bates is a really cool composer to check out if you guys aren't familiar with him. Mainly does a lot of orchestral stuff, but he's dabbled in the band world. He started off as a club DJ, making his living clubs Friday night, Saturday night, just turning records and making up beats on the spot and all that. But he got interest in composing, and he's done a lot with electroacoustic, and has some really cool pieces that involve pre-recorded sound that's really just interestingly and intensely mixed with the acoustic sound. He's had a couple of big residencies. He played with the Chicago Symphony. I think he's in San Francisco currently, doing a couple of these pieces. Check him out. There's some really neat stuff that he's done that integrates those two sound worlds together.
Yeah, it was a few years ago that the Wind Symphony played Mothership by Mason Bates, and a great piece of his. We're very fortunate in that we have both a 9-foot Steinway concert grand and a 5-foot smaller piano when we need them. But you're right, we use that keyboard for we use it for organ. There's not a full pipe organ in the hall behind me, and we also use it for celeste. One of these days we're going to get a real celeste, but coming in at about $24,000 for a great one, I think we're still using the electronic one. Well, perhaps we should transition to talk about this project and this piece. So here we all are. We're spread out all over the world. We're on Zoom. We've got people from let's see. I'm going to switch to gallery view here. And how many people are from Pennsylvania? Wave, or otherwise give me a thumbs up if you're from PA. Okay. And how about if you're from somewhere else? So if you're not in PA right now, give me a thumb up. Yeah, look at that.
Awesome.
And so we really have people from all over. We are socially distant from each other. We already talked at the beginning about how that makes it a challenge, of course, when you're trying to have an ensemble experience. So, tell us about this piece, Mandatory Social Distancing. It's a little tongue-in-cheek, both the title and some of the musical instructions as you get through the piece.
So one of the things that I've come to learn, again, the good fortune of where my career is, I get to work with a lot of ensembles all over the country. And it's even better because other people are paying for the flights to get me all over the country, which is definitely the way to do it. What I've found going all over the country is band kids are the same everywhere. And again, I'm putting myself in that category of band kids. I've just come to know that once I learn what instrument somebody plays, I'm going to have an idea of what their personality is. Or if I see a kid's personality come out, I can call out their instrument before I ever see them get something out of a case. Tuba players, not sure where you guys are at. We are all the same, every one of us. Usually not really that dumb, but we're also kind of dumb. Every year I've taught DCI, the book smart, the smartest kid in the horn line has been in the tuba section. Also probably one of the dumbest kids on the field. It's who we are. I don't know what it is. Drummers, you guys are all the same. You're the reason why band directors don't have much hair, or what they do have, it's gray. We're all the same everywhere. And so, that tongue-in-cheek sort of thing, that it's kind of my style. And like I said, I'm not going to fix this disease, nowhere near my wheelhouse, but what can I have control over, and what can I do, and how do I have a positive outlook on it? And so a little bit of it is, that tongue-in-cheek, let's have just a little bit of fun with life. And, that's how we should be doing it. The title actually came to me from another friend of mine, another band director who I was talking to shortly after this piece started to go from a seed to a little seedling sprouting out of the ground. And it was her, she made it as a joke about the title of Mandatory Social Distancing, but yeah, it felt kind of apropos. I felt like it sort of stuck. And, on one hand, the tempo stylistic marks throughout are a little bit quirky, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but they're also kind of cues as to, the piece was sort of my way to deal with the emotions going through everything throughout the piece here as well. And even the password protected part of the website, I'm not sure if you guys had the password for that or how stuff's going, but the password, that is COVID-19, but with changing some of the characters around in that as well. So it's, again, tongue-in-cheek. It keeps you, a little bit more optimistic and a little bit having fun with the situation that we're in. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you can look at something more interesting than me, and bring up the piece here and kind of talk to you a little bit about it as we go through. Here we are at the beginning of the piece. Anybody who's music notation dorks, if you're not familiar, this is Dorico, which is a new kid on the block. Sibelius used to be the big player. Finale has a lot of attention. MuseScore, also a great program. Actually, I work for MuseScore on the side. Dorico was made by all the guys that invented Sibelius 20 years ago now. They got fired by Avid, the company that makes Pro Tools. They got hired by Steinberg, who makes Cubase. More information than you thought you were going to get this afternoon. But they came out with this program called Dorico, which is, it's fantastic. It's wonderful. Check it out. They've got a free demo on the website. I love it. It's great. Anyway, this is what Dorico looks like. So we're at the top left corner of the piece. And this is where I started writing. The first thing I did, as Jay and I talked about, was start to think about some logistics, because logistics is a huge part of this project. But then, before I even got back to South Carolina that night, I started writing a little bit. And the mood I was experiencing at the time, aside from this piece of music, was I just had this 3-day residency that ended early. I knew that the Blue Stars, the corps I teach, I knew that our April camp was getting canceled, that we weren't going to have that camp, that other drum corps were having questions. The WGI season had just been canceled. And actually at the time I was planning on a trip to go to Europe, to spend a month in Europe to work with, I teach and write for a drum corps in Germany. So to go to Europe for a few weeks, and to spend my birthday in Europe and all that, but that all fell through and came apart. So, just a whole lot of, man, what's going on? A lot of just unknowns. And that's what I wanted to start the piece off with. That unknown. And so as you listen to the beginning of it, it's not major, it's not minor. It just kind of, it sits there. It's kind of tonal, but it also has some dissonance to it. It just leaves you wondering what's going on musically, what's going on. I'm trying to do that musically and to convey that emotion. So that's this opening section, going through. The first couple of bars I wrote pretty early on, got through all this stuff. And then actually what happens back at 1:20 towards the end of the piece, the first 2 bars of that came to me right away. I'm like, I know this is something. I don't know what it is yet. It's going to become something. Let's put that aside. We'll figure that out later. So I started writing through this whole section here, going along and say, okay, want to change feels, want to get something going a little bit faster. And so then that gets into the next section. And so, tempo mark shown here. Not sure how big all of your screens are. Zoom in a little bit. So I knew that I was going a little bit faster, and I started to, writing through the musical material, and my process is sometimes I'll start with a harmony or a rhythm or a melody. Sometimes actually start with a tempo marking and let that give me some direction. But in this case, I was writing the music and coming up with a phrase and what does this feel like? And, there's some movement forward, there's some energy forward, but it's not like marching band, higher, louder, faster, higher, 160, 170, 180. And thinking practically, I didn't want to use tempos like that anyway. It would be hard to get that to line up when we've got to include all these videos from all over the country and try to get the videos to line up. So wanted to keep a little bit more controlled. And again, I'm back home in South Carolina and sort of coping with, okay, stuff's kind of going crazy everywhere. My girlfriend and I got up one morning and took inventory of what was in our pantry. We emptied the pantry out, cleaned it up, looked through the freezer, make sure we had enough food. And okay, so we need to do X, Y, and Z. And we were down to like our last 2 rolls of toilet paper. And so it took us like 6 different stores to actually find a pack of toilet paper, and happened to be on the Army base in town. And so just like that anxiety, but you don't want to look like the guy who's freaking out and panicking, but you don't want to miss anything. And so there's our tempo marking here. Hurrying, but not running, trying to look cool. Like when the cat falls off the back of the couch and they stand up like, yeah, I meant to do that. That kind of a look. So that was the section through here. And that kind of went along and sort of getting some stuff developing. When we get to 44, I had a lot of fun with 44. I love getting into something other than a 4/4 feel. So if you listen to it, it has that 7/8, 6/8 kind of groove to it, but consulting with Jay decided to keep it 4/4 3/4, make it a little bit simpler to read it and to understand it. Play a little bit of it. You should be able to hear it. So just a little bit of a feel. So you just have that. Is the audio coming through okay? Awesome, cool. So yeah, just a little bit of a different feel there. You know, something that gets a little more interesting, a little bit more fun to play, a little bit of interest going on. Kind of let myself get a little bit creative with some technical things throughout this section. And that goes along, and that kind of develops it, and it comes up and it says, okay, aesthetically, want to have another slow idea. Just want something pulls back, and there's a lot of dissonance, a lot of rhythmic dissonance, melodic harmonic dissonance. So I want something that's a lot more settled, texturally speaking. And so that gets to the next section. And again, you know, writing through the process, this is the week after everything starts to come apart. It was maybe Monday or Tuesday. I'm starting to work on it, and everyone's okay. I'm not going back to school for a couple of weeks. We're here at home. And the first few days is kind of like, you know, for all of you guys back home, snow days. Snow days are exciting for the first couple of days. But by the time you get to the end of week 2 of the blizzard of 09, was it, or 08, eventually you just want to get out of the house and you just want to start doing things again. And so, you know, we started to hit that point, you know, it's 3 or 4 days into social distancing, self-isolation, quarantine, all of that stuff. And you know, starting to want to do things again. You know, in my case, you know, I was going to the gym nearly every day. You know, I don't like going to the gym. I'm a tuba player. I don't like going to the gym. But you know, I'm even at a point now, like, man, I just want to go back to the gym. Like, go work out, go do something. And so this whole section was, you know, I just want to get into that mindset of, man, you know, just can we get back to normal? You know, can I go back and sit in English 101? Please, God, let me do that. Nobody wants to go sit in English. But I mean, we're thinking about even those things. Like, just let me get out of the house for something. And I'm sure Dr. McCutcheon would love to actually have a faculty meeting in person. You know, the stuff that you don't like doing when you have to do it. But man, just let me get out of my house. And that's this whole section here. Like, I just want to get back to normal. And that, you know, there's a lot of stuff through just, you know, that you know, some of the longing, you know, large expressive melodic leaps and playing on the dissonant, unsettled tones of a key, moving all the way through here. You know, that, and then that goes long, builds up, and then as it resolves, we get into the building towards the end here. You know, this 2/2 section, and now, like, you know, this is where we're getting away from where are we now, and let's start looking forward. You know, forward's where we need to go. And that's what this is all about. You know, we've got to look for this positive outcome. We've got to look to know that this is going to end. You know, anything you've ever been through, any of the worst parts of life, you know, whether it's finally getting that term paper written and turn it in so you can be done for the semester, or you've got to actually sit down and practice for your lesson coming up, or the recital you have, or auditions, or whatever that thing is that you just are dreading. It passes. You get through it. It ends, and we come out the other side. And that's what the end of this is about. You know, pursuing what we need to do to get back to normalcy, and so we can get through that. And that's the, you know, this next section is that pursuit to get us through it. And then we finally get to at 120 this fanfare idea that we are going to come out. We're going to be fine. We're, you know, this is going to pass. It's some of the last harmonic stuff is. It is going to pass, but maybe some things are going to be different. I'll just play a little bit of the end of it, just going into the end. So there at the end of it, you kind of have like this bit. It's a marching bandy kind of sound. Actually, to me, it sounds a lot like John Williams. Not my dad. My dad is John Williams, but a different one. A couple of John Williams pieces, some of his concert works sort of have, just this style ending to it, and it definitely has that fanfare, triumphant. It's a very optimistic sound, but then that last little low voice motive at the end there. Not quite settled, and we are going to get through it. Life's going to get back to normal, but there's going to be a new normal. Something's going to be different by the time we come out the other side of it, where it's not going to be the same world that we've been in. How is it going to be different? What's going to be different? But it is going to get better. So that kind of takes you through the piece. It's formally speaking, for those of you who are the music majors and enjoying or dreading through the theory and analysis parts of your musical careers. Formally speaking, it doesn't really fit in any neat boxes. It's kind of just sectional, episodic in nature, different ideas throughout. The sax solo in the slow section in the middle actually comes from the trumpet solo or the trumpet melody in the very opening section. But beyond that, there's not a ton of thematic development through it, but it's more, it's sort of about where are we now, and the emotional journey of how do we get through all of this weird stuff happening. We all cope with those emotions in different ways, and I feel like for me as a composer, as a musician, my coping mechanism is to take my thoughts and feelings and emotions and put them into music somehow, and to kind of reflect through that process that way. So that's kind of the piece. So again, take a pause. Any questions? I think my next thing is maybe talk about some of the technical parts of the work itself, and also some of the technical parts of recording the work, the video part of it. But again, pause if you have any questions about the piece and how we've gotten through that. Matt.
Right. So I had a quick question. It might help segue into the next part, but maybe not. So I noticed that you didn't have a particularly long period of time or you didn't have like as long as you wanted to sort of make it work, make the piece work. Are there any like what types of challenges? I bet this piece had a whole bunch of challenges individually, but specifically with like not having time for it. You kind of had set yourself a deadline. Does that sort of make things more challenging for you as a composer, or and how did you deal with those challenges?
That's a fantastic question. I guess, to start off on the enriching your musical background side of it, Stravinsky has a wonderful quote that I can't remember near any of the words that he said. So to paraphrase it, basically, the more you put restrictions on yourself, on the creative process, the easier it is to be creative. If you sit down with a sheet of white paper and the box of 120 crayons and I say, draw a picture, you're going to sit there for a half an hour trying to figure out what you want to draw first. If I give you a page out of a coloring book and the pack of 3 crayons at Denny's, you're going to figure it out pretty quick. And so, as a composer, that's sort of the same way. The more I put if you ever go bumper bowling, the more you got those bumpers on the side of the lane, the easier it is to figure out what you need to do and how to get it done. And now the not such a great reinforcement part, to be speaking to a bunch of college students. I'm one of those guys that would actually write the paper the night before. Your professors tell you to take a week, take 2 weeks, take notes, this, drafts. I'd crank it out the night before, and I've got a 4.0 for my DMA. I got a 3.96 on my master's. So yeah, it's kind of that negative positive reinforcement thing. Sorry, I know I'm a bad example. So actually, putting those deadlines on myself, I find that knowing I've got to get something done, my mind focuses on it, and I'm able to tune things out. During my master's degree, the music, there's a student composer society. They did a speed writing contest. And so you had 48 hours on a Friday afternoon. They sent a packet of information out, and you had to have a final score by Sunday afternoon. And I had a lot of fun with it. I actually wrote a really great piece out of it, and it's still actually one of my favorite things I've written. It's a 2.5-minute work for clarinet and piano, and it's kind of fun. It's kitschy, it's neat, but just, tune out the world, put the blinders on, and just focus in on it. And this time of year, I live that in the marching band world. This is a time of year band directors are starting to design their band shows. And so I've got 16 or 18 band directors that I write for, and every day I'm getting another email like, hey, so I'm looking forward to seeing some updates. I'm like, yeah, I'm just cleaning some things up and I'll have it ready for you. Okay, I'm going to write that one next. And just like that panic, have to get it cranked out. So there's a little bit of that I knew I had to get it done. I had a couple of sections that went pretty well. And there's I think it was Saturday morning. I'm just kind of like, still drinking my coffee, trying to wake up and become human in the morning. And a friend of mine, he's a percussionist, a front ensemble guy. He does a lot of WGI and drum corps, like that's his world. Because the WGI season got pulled, he was just hanging out on Facebook Live using Logic, creating just some beats. Just lo-fi, it's kind of mixing different sounds together and put some samples and composing. And I sat there for an hour watching him, and he just sat there the whole time just creating music. And man, it was cool. I had a lot of fun doing it. And I started thinking, well, what if I do Facebook Live? And so I figured out how to do the software and the technology. And so I had a couple of sessions where I went on Facebook Live, and all of a sudden having that Facebook window over here while I'm on my computer over here, I've got two monitors. And so I've got the piece over here and just like people on Facebook, their names staring at me like, okay, what are you going to do now? What are you doing now? And I just like, okay, I've got to work. I've got to be productive, and, not letting myself get distracted by, well, what's on Facebook? And okay, I need to go update that game, and, just work on the piece and forcing myself to get into it. I got a lot of stuff done that way. But yeah, was having a deadline to it. There's some things that I might have done differently had I had more time to it. But at the same time, I think the setting of the piece, the constraints of time forced me to put some limitations on the piece, on the content, for practical reasons. I'm sure all of you, as either music majors or just being in a fantastic music program that Gettysburg has, you guys can easily handle grade 5-6 literature, especially when you've got 4 or 5 weeks of rehearsal time leading up to that concert to put it together. Grade 5-6 is easily attainable. And especially when you have a director in front of you and you're sitting in the room and the director can yell at all the clarinets at one time, or, look at the trombones and get them to behave themselves all at the same time. But when we're all spread all over the country, we don't have that luxury. It's all about what can all of you as individuals handle almost on your own. With little interaction with the teaching process. So that forced me to sort of keep some things a little bit more constricted along the way as well, which I think helped me to prevent from trying to make things too big. As one of the caption heads I've taught for in drum corps would always caution us, don't get cute. Don't get fancy, don't get pretty. Don't try to do too much. Keep it restrained, keep it, nice and tight and compact. And that's going to make the final outcome product a little bit more achievable, which makes the final performance that much better. Great question. Anything else, or I can jump into some of the performance things?
Ryan, one of the things that struck me that you said a long time ago, actually earlier in our conversation today, you were talking about microtonality, and I remember, Miles Davis in some of his work spent a lot of time trying to find the notes between the notes, and I think that when you look at the way that music is often contemplative and introspective, you mentioned how writing this piece was a way for you as a composer to deal with your emotions around what's going on in the world right now. And I think we've had a little bit of fun with it, hurrying to the last roll of toilet paper. But I also think that there's some serious there's a serious side to that. And I think that my favorite musical instruction is the one that's relentlessly pursuing normal, and the fact that normal isn't going to just happen. It's not going to be automatic. We're going to have to chase it a little bit, and we will find it again. And I feel like the piece is hopeful and leads to it has a contemplative side, it has a fun side, but also is ultimately a hopeful and a positive thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I know for myself, and maybe it's how my mind thinks, but but there's a part of me hoping that we can all share this together. But I find music does a lot for me as far as helping to guide my emotion. For me, my go-to piece is Barber's Adagio for strings. I actually got 2 degrees at Westchester. And if you didn't know, Barber was born in Westchester. His boyhood home is about 4 or 5 blocks from the campus of Westchester University. And actually, now that he's passed, he's buried just outside of Westchester. There's a family grave, and his plot is right there. And the plot next to it is reserved for Giancarlo Menotti, who was his life partner. But it was, because Westchester is sort of like Barber's home, we always sort of took sort of, Barber's our guy. He's ours. And, I paid a lot of attention to him while I was there. His Adagio for strings for me is just this emotional release. And on my worst days, I could put that piece of music on and just kind of close my eyes and let that piece of music take me on that emotional journey. And by the time it resolves at the end, I found myself having gotten through those emotions and I'm ready to move on again. It's maybe it's a little bit of my hope that this piece can become that, maybe for some of you as the performers, or for those folks who are going to be listening to your performance here in a few weeks. I don't think I'm going to try to be so brash as to think that this piece is going to be on par with Barber's Adagio. But I think there is an emotional journey to it that does carry you through frustration and confusion and some loneliness, but comes out with that hope. And that when you listen to that last thing, you feel, yeah, this is okay. This is going to be okay. The picture of the dog sitting around the fire, this is fine, but the fire's going to go away. Cool. So if you want, I can talk about a couple little technical things there. I don't want to beat beat everything up too much, but a couple of little technical details, I think, just some helpful hints as you guys are starting to work on practicing it.
I think helpful hints would be much appreciated by a lot of folks in the group. I also just want to mention really quickly to everyone while we're sort of getting close to a transition point, that there are new parts that have come out, and they are on Moodle, and you can find an updated folder on our Moodle page. And I'll let Ryan tell you about the updates and the need behind that, and maybe you could let us know who really does and doesn't need to download a new part.
First, Amanda, like the humor, right? Have the dog in the fire background. They're wonderful. So I did post some updated PDFs. None of the musical content has changed. There were a couple typos that happened. One was a tempo typo, pointed out one of my Zoom chats with a clarinet player of all people. The clarinet players are always the ones with that attention to detail, and they remembered that you said green, blue, and not blue, green 3 years and a day ago, and they're going to hold you to that every time. So it was a clarinet player pointed out I had a typo in one of my tempo markings, the relentless pursuit, missed a couple letters in there. So fix that. And also the section between 44 and, let's see, where is it? 77. Really, I guess it was probably about 62 to 77 where it starts to get a little bit more chromatic. I like to write in concert pitch so that I don't need to try to do math all the time of thinking about how instruments transpose. I'm a tuba player. Actually, I started off as a clarinet player all the way through middle school. I was really bad. I sat last chair clarinet, ready to quit band and just walk away and not touch music ever again. Then my sister volunteered me to play baritone for marching band. I didn't really know what it was, but I did it because I was told to do it. And I was still terrible, and I got yelled at every day. I went home from band camp in tears every night because I was just awful. But somehow I still enjoyed it. And so that kind of brought me into it. But since high school, I've been a low brass guy. Concert pitch is the way to go.
Baritone is often the gateway brass instrument.
It really is. It's so easy to learn it. And then, as so many tuba players are, I was a baritone player. And then my band director said, here's your tuba. And so I became a tuba player. But yeah, so transposition is something, if I don't need to think about it, I love not having to think about it. And software is great. I touch a button on the keyboard and it does all the math for me. The one downside is because I started to get a little bit chromatic and have some fun with harmony leading up to 77, when I did that transposition, I went back and looked in like alto bari saxes, whole lot of double sharp signs going on there, some double flat signs going on there. And as much as I do hate woodwind players, I felt bad. So I edited the score. So I don't actually hate woodwind players. I just say that. So I went back and I edited the score and fixed those note spellings. So again, you know, the actual pitches, the buttons you need to push down don't change. Just what you have to read on the page hurts a lot less now. So when you look at those new PDFs, it's going to be hopefully a lot better read for you. Sorry. Also, and hopefully you have this on the Moodle, you'll have 2 big, massive packs of MP3 files to listen to. One uses the real MIDI export out of the computer so that you can hear all of the instrument parts and you can start to follow your line within the full score. So you can understand when you look at your part on the page, you can follow that in the audio. You have the score available. If you don't, you should have the score available, both the full real score transposed, but I also made a condensed score all in concert pitch. So either if you're not good at reading full score or you're not a music major and that's way too much math to have to do, you can look at it in concert pitch so it's a little bit easier to read how stuff's going on. But listen to the MP3s and follow that full score and you can start to see where there's some doublings where you're playing the same thing as somebody else or where you're going to be all by yourself. There's, again, 2 sets of MP3s. The first is just the export of the instruments themselves. This will let you follow your parts, like I just said, and also help with some tuning so you can start to hear how your part fits into the overtones with everything around you. That's an important thing. I'm going to cycle back around to that on the technical side of things with some other examples. There's also a piano set, click tracks that are just piano sound. And I learned this a few years ago. You guys know cadets of the old school back through the 2016 season. The guy that wrote for them then, his name's Jay Bocook. One of the best ears I've ever met in my life. Just a brilliant composer and arranger. Really hears things on a beautiful level. But whenever he sends out, Brandon, you know Jay, awesome. Whenever Jay sends out his recordings, when he's writing like a cadet's brass book, all we get is piano. And I'm like, well, what's with that? But then like I started putting my own scores just on piano. Man, can you hear if you've missed a note in a chord somewhere, like you do a transposition and you got off by a half step somewhere, you hear that real fast when it's nothing but that piano timbre. It takes away all the overtones and it's just pure sound. It also really helps with timing. So you have the set of piano click tracks to help you with timing all the way through and to give you a different interpretation of the intonation process along the way. So that'll all help you out. A couple little technical things I want to point out along the way, just for some clarity things. So Woodwinds for you guys first. And so the disclaimer I give, especially teaching drum corps and whatnot, you know, right now talking to the Woodwinds, but, you know, for everybody else, don't tune out just yet. Hopefully I'm not that boring, but might be something that you guys could pick up and learn a little bit from along the way. So Woodwinds, we're looking at the beginning here. And so here we're in measure 7. And where's my zoom function? There we go. So I've got oboes, clarinets, and saxes here. This line that's happening.
Ryan, let me interrupt you. We're looking at your desktop.
Oh, let's see. Try that again.
There we go.
There we go. All right. So this is measure 7, upper woodwinds, oboes, clarinets. You may have looked at your parts and see, you know, this rhythmic stuff, but there's actually this neat teardrop effect that happens. And the neat thing with the computer is I can isolate just that stuff. So I'll do oboe, clarinet, and some saxophone. Now, if I play that back, you can hear the effect. So kind of it's this idea of it's a 7th chord that builds up by the layers, one voice and the next, sort of this teardrop effect. And then that happens again a couple of bars later, a little bit of a different voicing, flutes, clarinets, and saxes together here. Same thing happens again. So it's a neat little subtle effect, but be cautious of your timing. And this is where I think the piano track will help you with tempo. It's not very fast. I think it should be easy enough for you to be able to subdivide the 16ths while you're playing through. So we get a really accurate interpretation of one E or and ah, so that the E's and ahs fall in the right spots of the beat. So we got that one for you. Let's see. Brass player's not going to let you guys off that easy. Yell at you guys next. So where are we now? We're at rehearsal 31. Trumpets, trombones. We have these 16th, 8th figures happening. And I kind of layered it. I started off with everybody all with the same rhythm, but thought for the clarity of the video, layering all these parts together, I made the second and third parts just straight 8th notes. But really go for that staccato sound so that we get the clarity. So that everything just lines up and down through that. And that happens again a couple of bars later, getting the trombones into the mix. So just be careful of rhythm, be really clear and precise with the rhythm. Horns, you guys have a little bit of a different adventure. While they're doing 16th, 8th, you guys have triplets. Nice and clear with your subdivision of the 3 pulses within the beat there, so that we get that duple triple back and forth feeling through there. Let's see, next one for everybody, as we start to come in towards 77, is when we get some real rhythmic adventures happening here. Whenever I'm teaching, I like to talk about rhythm, to keep it super simple, downbeat, upbeat. And the idea of the downbeat and the upbeat I'm sure there's probably a better explanation, but I teach that it comes from when you're tapping your foot. The downbeat is when your foot goes down, the upbeat is when your foot goes up. And when I'm counting rhythms, even now, after doing music for a lot of years, we'll just say it, a lot of years, I still count rhythms as down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. It helps a lot. So if you really commit yourself to the downs and the ups through this section, it's going to make it pretty easy to line up all of the rhythms, keep things nice and short and crisp and tight. But let's just isolate a little bit here to hear the effect that's happening. So it's just a whole lot of just these offset rhythms and the downbeat returned with the upbeat. Were this sitting in an ensemble, this would be something where you slow the tempo down, and much to every conducting teacher's chagrin, you tap the baton on the stand. You say, let's count this one, let's work it out slowly, and you get everybody to understand the downs and ups. Between the click track as reference and just trusting your musicianship, you're all college majors, you're going to be great. Trust that downbeat, upbeat, and get right in the middle of those beats, and it's going to work out pretty well through there. And let's see, the last one I want to point out for my woodwind friends again. There's a few examples towards the end where you have these running scalar patterns. I'm going to isolate measure 128 as one of the for instances. And this is a figure that we call officially in the ivory tower academic official composition technical terms, the swoop. Getting that big ascent happening to an arrival. And this is my composition professor at school really he did a good job beating me up on this one. When I would write figures like this, I would give everybody 16th notes all landing on that downbeat. And he'd ask me, well, why do you want to hear dugga 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 dum? I'm like, well, yeah, I just want to get that rip up into whatever. He's like, well, if you just want the swoop effect, don't try to write rhythm that you're going to try to clean. Just give the important part is rising and then landing on the downbeat. And that's what we have going on here between, saxes are playing in the sandbox here, the clarinets, oboe, flutes. So you can see here, my clarinet 3 is on 8th notes. Clarinet 2 is on 8th note triplets. Clarinet 1 is on 16ths. Just that much alone, we have 2 against 3 against 4. As much as I would love to hear perfectly precise polyrhythm of 2 against 3 against 4, we're not going to hear that. I'm not trying to hear it. Then you throw oboes and flutes into it. Oboe, 7 tuplets. I'm sorry. Oboe players tend to also be smart kids, so you'll get it figured out. Flutes, 5 tuplets. David Letterman. Just say David Letterman really fast. That fits 5 in a beat. But at the end of the day, I'm not trying to hear any of these rhythmic effects actually happening. What I want to hear is all of the woodwinds going up the scale and landing on the chord on the downbeat of 129. So again, terrible to be the guy talking to a bunch of students. So I'll apologize again, Dr. McCutcheon. Play the first note at the right time. wiggle your fingers on the right notes on the scale and land on the downbeat at the right time. Whatever happens in the middle is fine. Start at the right time, end at the right time, try to hit all the notes in the middle. It's going to work out great. It's kind of how I would do bowling, you know, just hope you hit everything in the middle. But at the end of the day, the effect that we get, we'll do all of these guys, play it for you. Nobody's going to read that. Nobody's going to know what you're going for there. But we hear that really great arrival on that beautiful F major chord at 129. That's what we're after. Swoop and then F major. So yeah, don't worry. Don't stress yourself over rhythmic clarity there. Start at the right time and at the right time. At the very end, everybody has this big rest at 131. Make sure we get that rest in there. Take a breath. Hold the dotted half notes and breathe on 3. You're not going to mess up the rest. Good breath on 3. Really, really watch the dynamics here. You know, you see brass, you have a subito piano, low voices, the tenor bass voices, you've got a fortissimo piano, right? But we have these subito pianos. Get down so that the middle voices, alto sax, horn 1, and the euphonium, get this last little statement of the fanfare motive happening so we can hear that go through. And then we want to hear the pianissimo, subito, and crescendo at the end through there. Low voices, low reeds, low brass. You guys don't have that subito piano. You know, these dissonant notes at the end. Nice and full sound. Doesn't keep it tasteful. Keep it polite, but nice full sound all the way through the end here. And then the last note, nice full value quarter note rather than like a March stinger. Let it have a full value to it so we get a little bit of resonance coming off of the end of it. So that's kind of a talk through some of the technical parts of the piece. I guess the one last technical thought along the way starts to get to my percussion friends. Thinking about how to write this piece and you know, so I'm like, okay, I want to use all these instruments. I'm going to leave piano out because we don't know what people have for pianos at home. You know, that's kind of a different level of confusion, but percussion was a challenge. What percussion instruments do I include? Everybody's stuck at home. What percussion instruments do they have at home? So I texted a good friend of mine who's a percussionist and a performer and said, okay, so if you're a college major, what percussion instruments can I expect you to own? She said, probably a snare drum, probably a bell kit is about all you can expect. Somebody might have a mallet instrument. People might have a small collection of a couple of cymbals at this point. That's going to be about it. You know, it's not really till you get into your graduate performance degree in percussion that you start to buy silly things like tambourines and triangles and all that other stuff. So, you know, what do you actually own? You know, I don't know any percussionists that own their own set of timpani and a concert bass drum and a gong. You know, who does that? Actually, Danny Elfman has a collection of gongs. I don't know why, but he's Danny Elfman. He has a lot more money. So the percussion thing, I could either stay limited to, okay, a snare drum and a bell kit. That's not very exciting. Found percussion is a really big thing these days. The best example in the band world is John Mackey's Foundry. One of the percussion instruments is pile of metal. Another one is 4 wooden bowls. And the direction is go find a pile of metal and make a pile of metal and bang on it, and there's your instrument. So that's the stuff that Mackey did. In my own world, I got to do a piece last year. A friend of mine bought a vibraphone that the process to create the bars, they're metallic but anodized bars, and the process created green bars. So we usually see silver vibraphones. Sometimes you see a gold vibraphone. His is green, and it's one of 2 out there. And so he created this project he calls the Green Vibes Project. Green in 2 words. One is his vibraphone is green, but also this sort of, he's using it as this environmentally friendly direction. And so he commissioned a series of pieces last year, all with an Earth Day motif to them. And just, you know, how can we, you know, bring awareness to stop polluting the earth is basically what it was. So the piece I wrote for him was a quintet, him with a green vibraphone and then 4 percussionists on trash. One of them was a jar of peanuts. That sounds like a really great shaker. You have to eat half the peanuts first, which is kind of part of the fun of writing a piece like that. Rather than a go-go bells, we used empty glass bottles. Let's see, we used another empty peanut tin as a kind of a bongo sort of a sound. And then we used a sandwich wrapper as a cabasa stand-in. So it was a vibraphone thing with basically a little Latin percussion groove section happening underneath it. And at the end of the piece, as all the players got up and left, they left the trash on the vibraphone so that whenever he would hit those bars, you don't hear anything. You just get the thud of a dead vibraphone sound. So kind of, it was a neat thing, but found percussion's a lot of fun. So that's what we're doing in this piece, is found percussion. So percussion friends, can I have a wave? Cool. So for you guys, I gave you the real instrument names for kind of the basic timbres that I have in mind for things. But I'm kind of actually hopeful that we don't actually have any of those instruments whatsoever. Most of you probably have a snare drum at home. Cool. What are the other options for a snare drum that aren't a snare drum? You know, so I've got some ideas in mind, and I don't want to give you guys any ideas because I don't want to limit your creativity by putting thoughts in your head. Like the idea of a concert bass drum, two thoughts come into the back of my mind. One, a closed garage door. Two, the back of a couch. Especially the sound of like your little brother tripping and hitting the back of the couch. Please don't do that. I don't want anybody to get hurt in the process of this. Sounds like that, but you know, think about what the instruments really sound like. What's the characteristic? If you're going to describe the sound of a bass drum to somebody who's never heard a bass drum, but you can't play a bass drum for them, how are you going to describe that sound to them? Is it a pitched sound? Is it a non-pitched sound? Is it metallic? Is it non-metallic? And kind of, you know, describe, you know, come up with ways to think about those sounds. Maybe it's your grandmother's fine china is going to be the great sound for a suspended cymbal. Or for the wood blocks, you've got your mom's pots and pans or something like that. Whatever you've got hanging out, get creative, have fun with it. Probably the easiest one is going to be the ratchet. I'm sure you've got a toolbox somewhere, grab a ratchet, swing it around, and you've got a ratchet. Kai, you have a question?
Yeah, so a percussionist, you know, I want to make sure I'm getting the vibe right. So I happen to have marimba, and I also happen to have like a double bass, like kick drum for my drum set. So you seem to be like thinking more found percussion. So should we focus on the found percussion even if we have the instruments, or do you, like, if we have the right timbre, like, use it?
So for the mallet percussion, you know, like I wrote it as a glockenspiel. So if you've got a bell kit at home, or maybe you don't, maybe you have a vibraphone at home, think, you know, like the metals sound versus the marimba line as a woods sound. If you've got a marimba, record that one on marimba. If somebody doesn't have a marimba and you have a digital piano at home, you could use that. Or maybe you have one of those like 1980s Casio 2-octave keyboards. Like, dude, that would be awesome. But like 80s synth sound, wonderful. Please don't use a Fisher-Price bell kit, like, you know, last resort for that one there. But if you have the marimba, go for the marimba. That would be awesome. You know, for the percussion especially, I'm probably going to, at the end, compiling audio, pick and choose which audio I'm using throughout so that it's not, you know, I don't want to double all of the percussion throughout, but highlight the different timbres and the sounds that we have throughout. If you have it, use it. Something that's probably could be useful for all of you who are the percussionists working together here. Communicate with one another and see who's got what and say, hey, I've got the best sound for a triangle. Cool, you got the triangle part. All right, and you know, kind of divide and conquer that way so that you guys can cover it with some of the most creative options. But also, if nobody has a really good bass drum effect, sure, you know, go ahead, use the kick drum that you've got. That'll be fine. And, you know, we'll see how they all layer together that way. You know, it's kind of, you know, going back to the premise behind the piece, like finding the silver lining in a way a good friend of mine says, embrace the suck. We're stuck at home. We're probably all getting tired of getting yelled at by our parents. I'm not even at home with my parents and they're still yelling at me about things. You know, so look for that outlet, look at some way of having some fun with it and sort of go for what can I do that's going to be outside the box on this one. We'll take the best sounds that we have for all of it. So if you've got the real thing, it's going to be a fantastic fallback. That means we absolutely have a good bass drum sound. We absolutely have a good marimba sound. If nothing else lays and fits in that pocket the right way. Cool. Any other technical questions performance-wise? anything along those lines. Cool. No hands popping up there. When you do come to the submission side of it, I do have room on the submission page, and I'll show you guys that in a moment, where you can actually submit 2 videos. So if you happen to be a sax player and you're equally talented on alto and tenor sax, if you're a trumpet player, let's say you want to do second and third, maybe you're a tuba player, you also do euphonium, something like that. If you want to submit 2 videos, that's great. That just gives us a little bit more to work with and some other things to fill in the gaps through there. I think we're going to have plenty of videos with 26 schools participating. We'll have plenty of videos for the big massed performance, but I'm also going to do separate videos for each school that participates. So that might help fill in some of the gaps whenever we do just the Gettysburg College video. If I need some extra background through that, it'll help out for some ways. Cool.
Real quick,
yeah.
Ryan, just for everybody to know, and we'll talk about this more on Wednesday. On Wednesday, we'll do a little conversation about some of the recording particulars. But I have asked everyone to submit their recordings to me via Moodle through a YouTube link. And I realize that you're not doing, you need the actual, you don't need YouTube, you need the actual MP4 file. And so the process for everybody is going to be a little bit different for submitting it to me versus submitting it for inclusion in the project. And we'll talk about that on Wednesday. I want to highlight something though that's really important, everybody. So there's new parts out there. As Ryan pointed out, there's nothing musically different, but from a reading point of view, unless you're really comfortable with double sharps and double flats and that kind of thing, you might find it helpful to download those new parts and print them. And I will say this, having been involved now, I think in 13 or 14, I can't remember exactly how many commissioning projects I've been involved in, but I can tell you there are always versions. And there's always the initial version, and then there's the 2 months later version. So that this is pretty normal, and the fact that we're getting all this done in 2 weeks, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of been a little bit of a whirlwind. This time of year, like I said, I'm usually in the marching band world, and I've kind of put all that stuff aside to get this knocked out. The great thing is that I think everybody sort of has embraced a new level of patience right now. The whole world is different. Everything is different from what we're used to. So hopefully get something that's going to be a little bit normal feeling somewhere out of all of this. So I do want to give you guys some technical recording the video tips along the way. I think the first big thing, and I know talking with some of the schools along the way, the panic is, I don't have good equipment at home to record. The phone that you have in your pocket is, if your phone's newer than 4 years ago, it's a fantastic video recording lab right off the bat. The audio abilities on cell phones nowadays and the video abilities is wonderful. So your phone by itself is going to give you the right quality video that we need. You don't need to worry about trying to record yourself in high def. Like if you look at the screen right now, we've got on my screen, I've got the 7x7, the 49 screen grid up, and you all look perfectly fine, but all those videos are compressed way down. When it gets time to make the final product, there's going to be several shots on the screen at one time. So, even, a basic 800 by 600 resolution is going to give a lot of quality for this kind of a layout. So you don't need to worry about recording super high def video. The best audio is possible will be wonderful, but you don't need to worry about going high tech or high end for the video. When you're actually recording, and mainly I'm going to yell at trumpet players. Well, trumpet players always need to be yelled at, but trumpets and trombones. When you're recording, you don't want to be pointing the bell right at the microphone. I'm going to share a video with you. So again, DCI. Have you guys seen some of the virtual horn line videos DCI has been putting out the last week or so? If you have, I actually did the Blue Stars video for us. And I did it because it was a warm-up for our project on mandatory social distancing, something to get some practice of editing video together on this scale. So I'm going to share with you one of our trumpet players' submissions. And I'm going to say this as I play the video for you. This guy's name's Nick. He's a trumpet player from South Dakota. He's one of the best trumpet players we have in the horn line. He is a ridiculously good trumpet player. This is the first video that he sent me. You can see he's got a high-end microphone in front of him, and he's committed to aiming that trumpet right at the bell. And here's what he sounds like. That's not a good sound. that just doesn't sound good. And so I sent him a message back and said, re-record it and just point your bell 30 degrees off to the side. He sent a video back. It is stunningly beautiful. It is wonderfully beautiful. If you actually saw the whole Blue Stars video, he's the guy that goes up to the double E flat at the end of it because he can. One of my tuba players went down to the low E flat. That's how we do it. So again, brass players just off to the side a little bit. I had a couple of folks from the Blue Stars, like they went like 90 degrees. We want to see you. It's about the music, but more so than the music, it's about you. We're band kids, and I think we're probably some of the most hardest hit by this situation. Band kids thrive on the ensemble. We love being in the room together, making music together, and giving each other a hard time before and after practice, and probably in the middle of it too. That's just band kids. Like, that's the life that we live. And now it's like, everybody go away and don't talk to each other. Like, that's hard. That's tough for us. And so, a lot of what I'm feeling with this piece is I wanted to bring you together, and you, the Gettysburg bands, together, but also there's 26 schools across the country that are doing this together. And, we're getting through this situation through this shared experience. And by having all of your faces in the video, that's where we're really sharing this experience. I don't want to see the side of somebody's beautiful Holton horn. It's French horn, great. French horns are beautiful. I want to see you. And so, brass, the brass players, don't turn too far to the side, just a little bit off to the side so that your bell is not aiming at your recording device. For everybody, record in a dead space. And by that, I mean something that has no reverb, no echo to it. Again, the Blue Stars example, a couple of the folks sent their videos. They were in their garage. One trumpet player recorded from the lobby of the School of Music where he goes to college. Beautiful sound. It's a great space if you want to hear yourself and feel good about yourself. But when it comes time to edit the video together, all of those big spaces cause all these decays, and it makes it tough to get a good release on the video. So I had to do some editing on that. That room where you have absolutely no echo, and like whatever you play, you can hear very clearly how bad you are. That's how I feel when I play. That's the best place for recording, because then we have just a nice, crisp, clear sound to layer it all together.
Ryan, I think we could say with confidence that most of the group is familiar with that. In that, how to say it? Our recording hall that you see behind our concert hall that you see behind me is really good for recording. And so, and it actually is. It's really good for recording. You can always add reverb. I don't tell many drum corps stories to our group, but I will say this: one of the most goosebump-inducing experiences that I ever had when I was drum major of Suncoast Sound Drum and Bugle Corps back in the very early 90s. We warmed up one night before a show in like the third deck of a parking garage, and when you hit those tuning chords and with all that empty cement around you, man, it's just, whew, talk about making you feel good. But it's not the environment that you want to record in.
Right. Yeah. It's like I had to do some editing on the Blue Star video, and there was two releases that we had in the middle of the performance that, again, some of those echoey things that it made it sound ragged. It wasn't, but it sounded ragged. So I had to go and doctor it just a little bit so that it sounded a little bit better than the unedited audio did. And so again, speaking of the recording and marching band versus not, as you look at some of these dynamics, I do use double forte, triple forte throughout the piece. Pretend you're playing your solo recital on a small, intimate recital hall stage, not out on a football field playing with crown brass or whoever. We don't want real double, triple, outside, double forte, whatever. Keep it reserved. What I learned with the Blue Star video is that I had to drop everybody's volume way down on an individual level so that the combined audio blended a lot better. And the less I need to damp your sound out makes it easier to bring everything and combine it together. So that's some of the stuff to make the recording. Once you start getting those recordings going, share with one another. If you have a Mac iMovie, you could have everybody text 3 or 4 files to one friend, dump it into iMovie, and loosely get them close enough that you're going to hear the general effect of what this piece is going to sound like once they all come together. If you don't have video software, you can even just layer the audio together and see how it starts to line up with one another to get a sense of where the piece is going. But that's also going to let you listen to each other and criticize one another. Obviously constructively, positively, but give each other feedback. That's one of the big things that we lose in, not being in the room with one another. If you've got, you're working through in the trombone section sitting there and Dr. McCutcheon cuts you off, and while he's addressing the flutes over here because flutes are out of tune above the staff and all that, the trombones can say, hey man, you missed that release there. You got to fix that. So you can help each other out that way just a little bit and, help build each other up and start to get into some of those higher level musical skills more so than just playing an instrument, but being critical of performance and giving feedback on a performance. That'll really help a lot of stuff that way. That's a couple of the big technical details. When you record, where are your Gettysburg stuff? Kind of looking around here. Amanda, there you go. Amanda, you're the great example today. Kyle, you got one there. So yeah, it's like we want to see your school colors. Just be at home, embrace being at home. Try to be in as silent a space as you can. Turn off fans. Try to not have the mic near the air conditioning. Keep the windows closed for the few minutes it'll take you to record your final take. So we don't hear, your brother cutting the grass outside or anything like that, or the highway up the street. If the cat happens to walk through the video, awesome, go for it. If your mom's yelling at you in the middle of the video, maybe don't go for that one. But kind of embrace the situation that we're in, and we want the piece to be as good as it can be. We want to hold our performance to a high professional standard, while also embracing that we are in anything but the ideal professional situation. But that doesn't mean we're going to give up what it means to be a fantastic musician. And I think that's going to be one of the best things that we're going to learn about this piece. We're going to share together about this piece. And then once this is out on the YouTubes out there in the world, that you can share to the entire world and say, yeah, we can still be fantastic even though we're not together. So yeah, that's kind of what I got. What more questions do you have? Whether more technical things about the process or anything at all, me, the piece, composing, life in general, whatever. Emily, go ahead.
Hi. So I wanted to ask about our recording quality. When you say with the dynamics, would you recommend us to just not play the dynamics so drastically different, kind of keep it within a tighter range? So like you said, don't make fortissimo super fortissimo, but should we kind of keep it all more or less the same volume?
We do want to hear the shape into it. With the dynamics is also a factor of energy level. It's a little bit of a tangent, but it's still worthwhile. I saw a performance of the Nutcracker a couple of years ago, and it was a local ballet company. They couldn't afford to hire an orchestra, so they used a recording of it. And on the loud parts, they turned the volume up. And on the soft parts, they turned the volume down. And decibels doesn't equal the energy of a dynamic. So we do want to hear the contrast, and definitely the low end, the pianissimos, let those be pianissimos. The double fortes, keep those a little bit more at bay. Trombones, I'm looking at you. So kind of scale it all down, but keep the bottom end where it is. Maybe your max volume would be whatever a comfortable forte would be for you as a performer. So that way we'll still get that shape so we can hear dynamic growth happening, but we're going to more importantly get the energy of the dynamic shape that comes along with it as well. Really great question. Kai, what do you got?
So I wanted to ask, how raw do you want the recording files? Because Dr. McCutcheon was awesome enough to teach a sound recording class, so some of us in the group kind of know some basics, like removing room noise or like kind of, you know, editing the space that we're in on a digital sense. So like how raw do you want these recordings?
It's you know, a little bit compressed is fine. You know, if your final product ends up ballpark 20-ish megabyte to 30-ish megabyte, that's going to be pretty good. If you get down to like 4 or 5 megabytes, we're going to start to get a little bit too much compression going on in there, and that's going to really, you're going to start to get the clipping in the audio file. The video file I'm not too worried about because they're all going to be shrunk down pretty far. But the audio files, I want to have a pretty decent level of audio to start from. On the other hand, uncompressed audio video, my poor little Google Drive is going to get filled up real fast if I start to get too many uncompressed files. So yeah, just, you know, if you're using something like Final Cut or iMovie, exporting to a pretty high level resolution, but for Apple devices, is a good standard like prefab export level to work on for that. You want to do a little bit better than web hosting. Web hosting gets pretty knocked down far, but again, you don't need to go full resolution uncompressed. That's a good question. I'll throw it out there, and most of you don't need to worry about this. If you ever play with your audio settings and you can change your audio resolution from 44.1 kilohertz to 48 kilohertz. If you've changed that audio resolution, it'll actually change the playback if your audio files are specifically set at 44.1 versus 48. If this is over your head, you kind of ignore it because you probably haven't messed with this. I actually learned the hard way with a piece that I set my audio resolution to 48, but was listening to something that was at 44.1. It was off by about 3/4 of a step, a little bit more than a half step, not quite a whole step. And I was confused, like, why is this so far off? And it turned out it was that difference. And a couple of the Blue Star videos, I think that was an issue with some of them. Their file came in like 15, 20 seconds shorter than everybody else's, but I listened to it and the click track is going, they're playing with the click track. What's going on here? So make sure that if you have messed with settings like that on your computer, make sure you're at 44.1. If you haven't touched those settings, ignore what I just said and just do your thing because you'll be fine. Recording with the click track spurs my mind a little bit. I'm old. I've been doing this a while. I've got, you know, my brain's full of holes. I'm a tuba player. I've blown too much hot air out the other end rather than actually hanging on to the oxygen. Record with the click track. The Blue Stars has been a wonderful learning experience for me, and I'm bringing those lessons to you. Before the video that you guys got to see on the internet of our core song, we did one of our warm-up chorales of a Bach chorale. So we said, put a Met in your ear, set it at 96 beats per minute, as is the prescribed tempo. Make sure you tune before you record it and play a nice in-tune recording and send it to us. It was some of the worst music we've ever heard in our lives because we realized that as band kids, as ensemble kids, we're doing those adjustments all the time. 100% of the time, as soon as sound comes out of our bell, we're being judgmental. Are we doing this correctly? And we're listening and blending with everybody around us. So when we did the core song video, we sent them a click track like what I've sent for you guys for our piece. And there was no editing as far as pitch content. The only editing I had to do was cutting out a couple of those release points and the 1 or 2 videos that, again, the timing issue, but I didn't have to adjust any tuning at all. So if you saw that video and what it sounds like, I didn't touch a thing on tuning. Another drum corps released a new video this morning. I may or may not have happened to have been employed by this drum corps the last couple of years. I'm in close friends with a guy who edited the video that they released, but it was full of a whole lot of auto-tune to the point that it sounds like MIDI more than live recording. I don't want to do that. So listen, play with that click track, listen to the click track, and play in tune with your band, which is your headphones. When you're doing that, have one headphone in and one ear open. Trombone players, for you guys, leave your left ear open, put the click in your right ear. Tuba players, whichever side your bell is on, have that be the open ear. Trumpet players, woodwinds, not as big of a deal for you guys, but have one ear open so you can hear the acoustic instrument. If you've ever tried to like hum and then sing, you actually find that you go flat. Hearing tuning through the meat of your skull changes how you perceive vibration, and you end up just a little bit out of tune. So listen with one open ear so you hear that acoustic sound. Summer, what question do you have?
So do you want us to record a video and then do a separate audio file and like overlay them, or do you just want a video that has a sound? Or
Yeah, just do audio video, one take, just video recording off of your device, your laptop, whatever. You guys don't need to do anything more technically advanced than start at the right time and stop at the right time and sound pretty in the middle. I'll do all the harder stuff.
Yeah, I want to jump in really quick and emphasize how important it is that we get one continuous take. So it starts at the beginning, begin your video, begin recording so that there's some dead sound, get the click going, play the piece all the way through, all the way down to the end, and then wrap things up. If you decide that you want to retake something, of course that's fine. But there does, and I think those of you who have done a lot of recording, people in my class included Kai and Brandon and Will and Sam Burr, and I'm trying to think who else. Is there anybody else who else was in the class that's in Wind Symphony? And I think they would tell you that as you're recording, it is quite possible to reach a point of diminishing returns. Right. So every time you stop every time you make a mistake. And so you stop in bar 7 and then you got to go back to the beginning, and then you stop in bar 13 and then you got to go back to the beginning, and then you stop in bar 32 and then you got to go back to the beginning. And before you know it, you've been at this for 2.5 hours and now you're tired and now your chops are shot. And so, I don't want you to turn in something full of mistakes. That's why we're having an in-progress checkpoint. But I also don't want you to get so caught up. Don't let what's the theme of remote teaching in coronavirus? Don't let the perfect get in the way of the good or the good enough. And don't worry about doing video editing. If you are good at video editing, please do not edit your video to punch out that one wrong note. Just let it go, and rest assured that we'll take care of things on the audio editing end. Oh, and hey, shout out to Will Esposito for having his playlist be featured on today's Gettysburgian whatever the thing is. There's a thing that has playlists. So, all right, Will, go listen to Will's music.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up.
Ryan, what do we have any? Let's just do one more quick trip around the room. I think we're almost at the end of our time, and it's been so good to have you here. It's been very informative for us to learn a little bit more about the piece and your writing. Let's take one more, as I said, quick trip around the room and see if anybody else has any questions or any observations. Anything else they want to ask Mr. Williams? Like maybe how did you get from a band director in Baltimore County Public Schools to now DMA in composition, or just anything really?
that was quite a fun journey. Actually, by the time I got into my first year of teaching, I started to realize that all the stuff that I learned in my education classes wasn't what we're actually doing in the classroom. Some personal things were going on at that time, but I decided to make a move, and I was living in Baltimore, but I was teaching marching band in Delaware. I was in the Army at the time in South Jersey. I was teaching drum corps in North Jersey. So 5-6 days a week, I would leave school and then drive north and drive north and drive north and drive. So why don't I just live up there? And so I got a teaching job up in Delaware. I was a band director, and my administrator was a gym teacher. Didn't quite understand what a band room looked like, and I kind of got burnt out a little bit on trying to make the relationship there work. And this isn't quite for me. And I loved writing, and I was starting to get more work writing for marching bands. And I could probably do okay as a writer. And that's sort of that snowballed and become what it is now. And like I said, I couldn't be more excited, more blessed about it. Thought I saw a hand raise pop up in the chat window. Amanda,
and we'll wrap up with Amanda here, and then I've got a couple of other things for everybody at the end.
Yeah, I was just wondering, do you have any music books or literature that you recommend reading? I know for me, I'm a college music major, and I'd be interested in anything that you might suggest.
Oh man, that's such a long list. I just finished my comprehensive exams, and I'm sure Dr. McCutcheon could actually might start triggering some old feelings back there. But the number of books I devoured last year trying to survive my exams, it's my bookshelf filled up. Probably the one book that I would throw out there to get started is by Alex Ross. It's somewhere on my shelf over here, I think. It's called The Rest Is Noise. Alex Ross is a columnist for the New York Times and writes about new music. He wrote this book called The Rest Is Noise. And through the book, it's a survey of 20th century music history, but it's way more interesting than Cascapane or any of those history books are. He takes a couple of composers or performers and puts them against each other and talks about how their lives intersect. It's a really great read and sort of opens up some other doors and takes you down some rabbit holes that are a lot of fun. Let's see, Leonard Bernstein. Anything Leonard Bernstein wrote is fantastic. He was a wonderful conductor, very impassioned conductor, extremely great composer. I think underappreciated as a composer in my world of composition. Bernstein wrote pop music with musicals and stuff, so he's not for real. But I think his music is fantastic. But the same passion that he conducted with and he composed with, he also writes with. And his books, his writings are wonderful. Really great stuff to check out. I've got a bookcase next to me here, so I keep looking over and see what I have over here. There's also some really dorky stuff that I love. Joseph Strauss's book on post-tonal analysis is a real page turner if you're a real big dork. It's real big dork, wonderful.
Okay.
Although I might one up you, I've got mine autographed. He came to South Carolina a couple of years ago, and I said, "Can you sign my book?" It was one of the dorkiest things I've done in my life. I've done a lot of dorky things too. So it's a great book. Theory 4 requirement. So don't be so begrudging about reading it. It's heavy. It's a lot of tough stuff in there, but it's a cool read. Ben Johnston has some cool writings. Kyle Gann is another author, Gann. He's a microtonal composer. His stuff is really weird. He wrote a piece that uses a 33-step octave. So that's like 3 times as many notes between the octaves. But he used to write for a paper called The Village Voice in the Village in Manhattan, the south end of the island. He has a couple of books of his articles that are really wonderful to read and talking about like the new music. And by new music, I mean like the stuff that's happening in the here and now, like new music. Some really cool writings on that stuff too. So a couple of suggestions. I could probably come up with a bunch of others that may or may not be enjoyable and or torturous, but that's kind of what getting a DMA is all about.
Yeah, you're bringing me back to my research and bibliography class, which is all about a long list of books. Hey, folks, I'm going to unmute everybody's microphones. This is going to be a scary time, and what I was hoping we could do is all give a shout out of thanks to Ryan Williams. Woo!
Thank you.
Well, it's been a lot of fun. Really enjoyed getting a chance to chat with all of you and your questions. If you have other questions, you can jump on my website. I've got my email addresses on the website. My cell number is on it. Feel free, shoot me a text, shoot me an email. If you have questions, please reach out. Like I said, I'm a teacher at heart. That's who I am, and I'm not afraid of getting to talk to students and help out and all that. Check out the music on my website. If you have questions about other pieces or anything like that, check it out, see what you got there and all that. But it's been a lot of fun. Thank you all for humoring me here this afternoon, and I'm looking forward to see how we go here.
Thank you very much, Ryan. We appreciate you being here with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was quite a thing. Certainly a good conversation that went in a lot of different directions, and I hope you feel like you got something out of that. I think the recording tips part is really good. I think some of the stuff about the musical aspects are things that we really want to take a look at. Symphony band musicians. If you could show up to Symphony band tonight, we're going to start at 7:30, and my plan is hopefully to to go no more than a half hour. It may stretch to 45 minutes, but my plan is 7:30 to 8, because I've been on Zoom since 10:30 this morning, and I'm zoomed. I'm zoomed out. But that, you know, for everybody else, Wind Symphony musicians, we will meet on Wednesday. 4 to 6 is our usual time. I don't think it's going to take all 2 hours. We'll see how it goes. If it ended early, that would be okay.
Haley.
Hello?
Haley's house.
Hello? Okay, there you go. Hey, Megan. So anyway, that's what I've got for you. If you're in both, yeah, come to Symphony Band tonight and then come to Wind Symphony on Wednesday, but it'll be fast, I promise. And then that's about it. Check your email for updates. Download the new parts. That's really important. We want to make sure everybody's playing the right notes. Although if you're playing the old parts and you're reading double flats, you'll still be playing the right notes. It'll just be harder. Any questions for me or anything else? We're going to have a chance to do a whole check-in on Wednesday, so we don't need to get into the weeds here right now, but I just wanted to take any quick questions. Thumbs up? Where's my, oh, there you go. Hang on, let me put it right there. Perfect. There you go. Woohoo! Yeah, me and Ethan, we got the matching thumbs. All right. Thanks, everybody. And thank you for your questions today. And we will see you on Wednesday. Peace. Oh, hey, don't forget to wash your hands, but more importantly, don't forget to moisturize. Yeah? All this hand washing, you get the dry skin. Moisturize. Bye-bye. Have fun storming the castle.